Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in.
Luna Nozawa thought she had already been pushed to the edge of what a human heart could take, but nothing could have prepared her for the gut punch that came crashing down on her world when Electra Forrester dropped the kind of bombshell that didn't just shake the room, it detonated her very sense of reality, ripping apart the fragile hope she had been clinging to and leaving her gasping for breath as if the floor had been yanked out from under her, and the way it all unfolded only magnified the humiliation, betrayal, and sheer devastation coursing through her veins because one moment she was standing in front of Electra, bracing herself for another one of her cousin's cutting remarks or vicious taunts, and the next she was staring at her with wide, disbelieving eyes as Electra calmly, almost triumphantly, revealed the shocking truth. She was pregnant, and not just pregnant in some far-off, abstract way, but carrying a child that connected her, in the most permanent, irreversible way imaginable, to a man that Luna herself still loved, a man that had once promised her the world, a man whose betrayal had already left her reeling, and in that moment Luna's heart didn't just ache, it shattered into a million irretrievable shards that scattered across the cold, polished floor of the Forrester estate like pieces of broken glass catching the cruel light of day, because what Electra had done, and more importantly what this revelation meant, wasn't just about jealousy or rivalry, or even the tangled webs of family politics that so often defined the world they lived in. It was about the cruel reality that life had chosen to twist the knife in Luna's side yet again, taking away the one thing she had fought so hard to believe in, the possibility of love, redemption, and a future untainted by lies, deceit, and betrayal. And as Electra's words hung in the air like smoke from a freshly fired gun, Luna felt every muscle in her body seize up with the kind of shock that makes time feel like it has stopped, because in that single instant she saw not only the smug satisfaction flickering across Electra's face but also the devastating chain reaction this news would set into motion, from the collapse of her own carefully guarded dignity to the destruction of whatever fragile threads of connection she still had to the man she loved. And the cruelest part of all was that Electra knew exactly what she was doing, savoring every ounce of power as she weaponized her pregnancy announcement like a blade aimed straight at Luna's heart, a heart that had already been battered by betrayal, rejection, and the relentless cruelty of fate, and now found itself utterly pulverized under the weight of this new, unbearable truth, because Luna couldn't stop the flood of images that assaulted her mind, the image of Electra, round with child, proudly showing off the very proof of what she had taken from her, the image of family members cooing over Electra's baby shower while Luna stood in the shadows, unseen, unwanted, discarded, the image of the man she still loved, his hand resting on Electra's stomach, his voice murmuring words of reassurance and commitment, words he had once said to her, words that had once been her lifeline, now poisoned forever by this twist of fate, and with every image her chest tightened, her breath grew shallow, and her pulse pounded with a mixture of grief, rage, and desperation, because even as the tears burned hot in her eyes she refused to let Electra see her break, refused to let her cousin have the satisfaction of witnessing her completely unravel, but deep inside Luna knew that something fundamental had cracked in her, something that could never be put back together again, and the truth was that it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the permanence of it, the way a baby changes everything, the way a pregnancy binds two people forever in a way that no amount of pleading, fighting, or wishing can undo, and the realization that no matter what happened from this point forward, no matter how much she tried to fight back, no matter how much she wanted to believe that destiny might still throw her a lifeline, she would always live in the shadow of Electra's shocking news, forced to watch her rival build the kind of future that she herself had once dreamed of. And as the room spun around her, Luna thought back to all the choices, all the mistakes, all the moments when things could have gone differently, and the cruel irony of it all almost choked her because just when she thought she had endured the worst, just when she thought she had found the strength to rebuild, life had chosen to strike again with a blow so catastrophic that it left her soul in ruins, and though her lips trembled as she whispered, "No, no, this can't be real," she knew deep down that it was real, painfully real, and that knowledge was like a jagged blade twisting deeper into the wound, making her question not only her future but her very worth, as though fate itself was mocking her for ever believing that she could have happiness, and while Electra stood there with her head held high, basking in the chaos she had unleashed, Luna felt her entire world collapse into ashes around her, leaving her with nothing but the haunting echo of the one truth she couldn't escape. Her world had been shattered, utterly and irreparably, by the cruelest, most shocking baby news she could have ever imagined. But the torment didn't stop with Electra's words, it only grew louder, heavier, and sharper with every second that passed after that brutal revelation, because once the shock wore off, once the disbelief stopped echoing through Luna's mind, a new storm began brewing inside her chest, one that mixed rage, sorrow, jealousy, and a kind of hollow emptiness that made her legs feel like they could buckle beneath her at any moment. And the cruelest part was that Electra seemed to know exactly how much damage she was inflicting, standing there with that smug, triumphant glint in her eye, her arms folded across her chest as though she had just played the winning hand in a game she had been planning for months, and Luna couldn't help but think back on all the subtle ways her cousin had been maneuvering against her for weeks, maybe even longer, planting seeds of doubt, whispering poison into ears, stealing glances at the man Luna loved when she thought no one was looking, and now, in one earth-shattering announcement, Electra had proven that every instinct Luna had dismissed as paranoia had been right all along, and the sting of that realization only deepened her pain because she had wanted so badly to believe that family, no matter how complicated, meant something, that even when people fought and clashed, there were lines you didn't cross, but Electra had not only crossed the line, she had bulldozed through it with a cruelty that left no room for forgiveness, and as Luna tried to steady her trembling hands, she couldn't help but picture how quickly the news would spread, how within hours the Forrester mansion would be buzzing with whispers, how Ridge and Brooke would nod gravely and speak of family unity, how Steffi would smirk with that air of superiority, reminding Luna yet again that she was an outsider in a world that had never truly accepted her, and how even those who had once supported her would slowly shift their loyalty to Electra, because nothing cements a position in the Forrester dynasty quite like a baby. And Electra knew it. She wasn't just announcing a pregnancy, she was securing her future, staking her claim, ensuring that no matter what else happened, she would always have a permanent seat at the table, while Luna would be left fighting for scraps of attention, dignity, and relevance, and the unbearable weight of that truth made Luna's stomach churn, because she had always feared she didn't fully belong in this family, and now, with Electra's shocking baby news, she felt herself being pushed even further into the margins, like a shadow no one cared to notice, and yet even through the anguish, there was a flicker of defiance in her chest, a voice that screamed not to give up, not to let Electra's cruelty destroy her completely, but that voice was nearly drowned out by the tidal wave of pain crashing down on her, especially as she imagined the man at the center of it all, the one she had loved with her whole heart, standing by Electra's side, rubbing her back, attending doctor's appointments, grinning proudly as he shared sonogram pictures, and the image was so vivid, so real, that it felt like a knife twisting in her ribs, because once upon a time those were supposed to be her moments, her milestones, her memories, and now they had been stolen, repurposed, rewritten with someone else in the leading role, and as much as Luna wanted to scream, to fight, to demand answers, she felt frozen in place, a prisoner to the cruel spectacle Electra had orchestrated, and it dawned on her that this wasn't just about a baby. It was about dominance, about Electra proving once and for all that she could take whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and leave Luna to pick up the pieces. But even as that realization settled in, Luna knew one thing with absolute clarity: her world may have been shattered, but she wasn't going to stay broken forever, and though she could barely breathe, though her hands shook, though her heart screamed in agony, she silently vowed that this wasn't the end of her story, even if in this moment it felt like the cruelest, most unbearable ending imaginable. As Luna stumbled away from that confrontation, her mind spinning, her vision blurred by tears she couldn't hold back any longer, she felt the crushing weight of memory pressing down on her, every tender word, every stolen kiss, every promise that had once filled her with hope now replaying in her mind like a cruel movie reel designed to torture her. Because how could she reconcile the man she loved with the reality Electra had thrown in her face? How could she make sense of the idea that someone who had once looked at her as if she were his entire world could now be bound, forever and irreversibly, to the very woman who had become her greatest rival? And as she sank into the solitude of her car, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands, the sobs finally broke free, racking her body with a ferocity that matched the storm in her chest. Yet even through the tears a part of her kept whispering questions she couldn't silence. Was Electra telling the truth? Was this really happening? Could there be any chance this was just another manipulation, another cruel game designed to break her spirit? And if so, what proof could she possibly find to expose her cousin's lies? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that even if there was the slightest chance Electra was fabricating or exaggerating, the damage had already been done, the seed had been planted, the whispers had already begun, and the man at the center of it all would inevitably be pulled into Electra's orbit, whether by obligation, guilt, or genuine involvement, and Luna felt powerless in a way she hadn't felt in years, like every ounce of control she had fought so hard to build had been ripped away in an instant, leaving her to face the harsh truth that sometimes life doesn't give you a chance to fight back, sometimes it just crushes you, and all you can do is decide whether or not you'll rise from the rubble. And though she couldn't yet imagine how, though the pain was still raw and consuming, she whispered to herself that she wouldn't let this break her forever, even if at this moment, her world felt like nothing but jagged pieces of glass, glinting with the cruel reflection of Electra's shocking baby news. The cruel thing about pain is that it doesn't end when the confrontation does, it lingers, growing heavier with every passing hour, and for Luna, Electra's announcement was not something she could just walk away from, it followed her into every corner of her life, like an echo that refused to fade, and as she sat alone in her apartment later that night, surrounded by silence that felt more oppressive than comforting, she replayed every second of that encounter in her mind, dissecting the words. The tone, the smug tilt of Electra's chin, the way her cousin's voice had carried not just truth but power, and each recollection stung more than the last, because Luna realized that this wasn't just about personal heartbreak, it was about being outmaneuvered in the ruthless chess game that was life in Los Angeles, where family ties were both armor and weapons, and Electra had just played the kind of move that shifted the entire balance of the board. She stared at the dim glow of the city lights outside her window, trying to breathe, trying to find something solid to hold on to, but every time she thought she had calmed down, a fresh wave of grief and rage slammed into her chest, and she could hear Electra's voice taunting her, "I'm pregnant." 2 words that had detonated like dynamite in her soul, rewriting everything she thought she knew about her future. She tried to picture a way forward, to imagine herself standing strong, reclaiming her dignity, but the images were constantly interrupted by invasive visions of Electra flaunting her pregnancy, of family members gushing over the baby, of headlines splashed across the media, of whispered conversations behind her back, and most of all, of the man she loved choosing someone else, binding himself to Electra not just for 9 months, but for life, and the agony of that thought made her press her hands to her chest as though she could physically hold the pieces of her broken heart together. The next morning was no easier. She woke with swollen eyes, a sore throat from crying, and a hollow pit in her stomach that refused to settle, and as she moved through her routine like a ghost, showering, dressing, staring blankly into the mirror, she wondered how she was supposed to face anyone, how she could possibly walk into the Forrester building and pretend like her world hadn't just been obliterated. But she knew she couldn't hide forever. If there was one thing Luna had learned, it was that the Forresters thrived on information, on gossip, on scandal, and if she didn't face this head-on, the story would grow without her, twisting into versions even crueler than the reality, and so, with trembling hands and a heart pounding painfully in her chest, she made her way to the office, each step heavier than the last. The moment she walked through the door, she could feel it, the shift in energy, the sideways glances, the hushed whispers, and though no one said anything outright, she knew the news had already spread, knew that Electra hadn't wasted any time in making her pregnancy public, framing herself as the glowing mother-to-be, the future of the Forrester name, while Luna was left to shoulder the role of the bitter outsider. She wanted to scream, to demand fairness, to tell her side, but her voice caught in her throat, and all she could do was keep moving, praying her legs wouldn't betray the wobble in her knees, and it was in that moment she realized just how much power Electra held now, not just over her, but over everyone, because a baby changes the stakes, a baby shifts priorities, a baby becomes the unarguable excuse for loyalty, protection, and sympathy, and Luna could see it already in the way people looked at her cousin, as though she were suddenly untouchable, cloaked in the sanctity of motherhood, while Luna was left stripped, raw, and exposed. And yet, even through the humiliation and pain, a spark began to flicker deep within Luna's chest, a spark of determination, of defiance, of the refusal to let Electra dictate the rest of her life. She thought back to all the times she had been underestimated, dismissed, shoved aside, and she remembered that she had survived before, that every scar she carried was proof of her resilience, and maybe, just maybe, this was the moment to stop playing defense and start fighting back. But how? The question gnawed at her as she sat at her desk, pretending to work while her mind raced, her eyes drifting constantly to the closed door of Electra's office, behind which she imagined her cousin gloating, reveling in her victory. Luna's jaw clenched, her fists curled, and she swore to herself that if Electra thought this was the end of her, she was wrong, because Luna Nozawa was not going to let her story be rewritten by someone else, not without a fight. The pain was real, the heartbreak unbearable, but beneath it all, there was steel, and as the hours ticked by, Luna began to realize that sometimes a shattered world can be rebuilt, not by erasing the cracks, but by using them to form something stronger, sharper, more unbreakable than before. And though Electra's shocking baby news had destroyed her present, Luna was already beginning to plot her future, one that would not only reclaim her dignity but might just leave her cousin wishing she had never underestimated her.